As governments have taken action to address the asymmetric consequences of COVID-19, with vulnerable populations being severely affected, the discussion regarding universal basic income has recently reemerged. Because of the disproportionate impact on low-skilled workers, the likelihood that the world will continue to be vulnerable to other viruses in the future, and the additional impact of climate change, many countries are already providing temporary cash relief to the poorest in order to limit the effects of the lockdown. The opposition to UBI comes in many forms. Many people believe that universal basic income is unaffordable and hence fiscally unwise, especially in light of COVID-19's massively increasing impact on the national finances. A second set of considerations relates to the function of incentives. It's believed that paying people to remain at home and severing the link between income and employment could be harmful to social cohesion. Additionally, it could make inequality worse, especially if UBI takes the place of other targeted transfers whose primary recipients are currently the unemployed and impoverished. Others are concerned that UBI would serve as justification for policymakers to ignore the problems caused by population aging and the impact of technology on the nature of work. The issue of affordability is undoubtedly crucial. This was one of the key causes of Switzerland's 2016 UBI referendum's resounding rejection, which is not surprising given the nation's long history of prudent budgetary management. UBI is very much on the table in a few countries that are currently running large budget deficits and have debt levels that are higher than 100% of GDP, but this seems unrealistic despite being understandable in the midst of an unprecedented crisis that is driving unemployment to extremely high levels. However, it could be premature to quickly dismiss UBI on the grounds that it's unaffordable, at least until we have had an open discussion about the structure of the budget and related spending and tax policies. As an illustration, a recent IMF research on energy subsidies found that they cost US $5.3 trillion annually, or almost 612% of global GDP. These subsidies not only have a significant regressive impact, but they also hasten climate change. In fact, cutting back on energy subsidies would significantly lower CO2 emissions and air pollution-related fatalities. The most recent data from the IMF is really insightful. The cost of these subsidies for the three nations with the highest rates of extreme poverty, India, Nigeria, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo, ranges from a low of 2.4% of GDP for Nigeria to 9.2% of GDP for India. Energy subsidies are hardly the only significant source of funding for more appropriate social protection policies, of course. Additionally, we spend a lot on what the IMF refers to as unproductive areas, much of which is related to our excessive military spending as a result of the lack of proper institutional frameworks for collective security as required, but never implemented by the UN Charter. The negative effects of corruption on government revenue, economic growth and investment, private sector development, and other factors, as well as documented in empirical literature. These effects have an impact on government's ability to allocate funds to productivity-enhancing sectors like social protection, education, infrastructure, and strengthening health systems, which COVID-19 has shown to be in general disrepair, even in some high-income countries. The IMF estimates that the yearly cost of bribery alone is somewhere between US $1.5 and $2 trillion, or around 2% of the GDP. With yet another extensive body of research on tax avoidance and evasion, one might question whether enough is being done to enhance tax administration and the fairness of the tax system. According to a recent review of the literature in the journal Finance and Development, tax havens collectively cost governments between US $500 and US $600 billion a year in lost corporate tax revenue, with US $200 billion of this lost revenue going to low-income countries, a sum significantly greater than the total of ODA and at a proportionally much higher share of GDP than in the case of the advanced economies. The ramifications of resource mobilization progress in each of the aforementioned categories are beyond the scope of this note. The debate over universal basic income and other measures to improve social protection and better equip the populace to withstand shocks like COVID-19 cannot be conducted in a vacuum, as though the makeup of the tax code and the structure of public spending are unchangeable and beyond the control of elected officials and the people who elect them. Without a doubt, it is not. It's an empirical question whether UBI, or more broadly, the existence of a social safety net, reduces work incentives. The evidence for UBI in particular is patchy, but I find one accidental conducted pilot experiment at a 15,000 person American Indian reservation in North Carolina to be particularly encouraging. There, UBI was linked to lower levels of crime, higher rates of school graduation, lower levels of substance abuse, and increasing evidence of small business creation and entrepreneurship. A reasonable inference to be drawn from the research looking at the data is that at least part of the crime, drug abuse, and other social dysfunctions may be related to the psychological consequences of economic uncertainty. Low income alone does not define poverty. Additionally, it causes mental agony, difficulty, and distress, which may hasten the collapse of society. As people take advantage of better chances for self-improvement, rather than staying at home doing nothing, as some UBI detractors have suggested, we will see real changes in social and economic situations if we provide them with a solid safety net. Whether UBI promotes income disparity is undoubtedly a design decision and not a foregone conclusion. There isn't enough proof that, say, the universal basic income will cause complacency and a refusal to address other structural economic issues, such as aging populations and the effects of robotics and AI on the nature of labor. Non-universal transfer plans, according to the supporters of the UBI, are less desirable since voters will not support them enthusiastically. This criticism, however, is unfounded. Similar to national health insurance, which doesn't give out monthly payments to everyone, but instead provides benefits to everyone who has incurred medical expenses, guaranteed basic income is equally universal. The same is true of initiatives that unequivocally promise to meet basic need, such as providing food to the hungry and unemployment benefits to the unemployed. In the nations where policies are in place, they are quite well liked. Last but not least, a large portion of the enthusiasm for UBI is based on an incorrect interpretation of employment trends in industrialized economies. Contrary to popular perception, there's no evidence that work as we currently know it is about to vanish. It's true that globalization and automation are reshaping the labor market, eliminating specific job categories and raising inequality. But rather than creating a system where a sizable portion of the populace receives handouts, we ought to take steps to promote the growth of well-paying middle-class jobs while bolstering our frail social safety net. This is not done by UBI. Universal healthcare, robust unemployment compensation, better designed retraining programs, and an increased earned income tax credit should be the top legislative priorities in the US. For low-wage workers, the EITC currently serves as a guaranteed basic income, costs far less than a UBI, and actively promotes employment. On the business side, eliminating payroll taxes and lowering indirect expenses would encourage employment growth at a fraction of the price of a UBI. An increased EITC and lower payroll taxes would go a long way toward generating worthwhile jobs at all levels of the income distribution, together with higher minimum salaries to discourage companies from free-riding on workers' tax credits. These solutions make use of democratic politics, which is also crucial. The same cannot be true of a UBI, which is dropped from the sky to appease the irate populace. It doesn't even include or consult the individuals it wants to assist. Therefore, UBI plans are reminiscent of the bread and circuses tactics used by the Roman and Byzantine empires to appease the populace, rather than offering them possibilities for economic advancement and political sway. Tycoons and politicians did not pass down the current social welfare state, which has served the industrialized country so well. It aimed to give people possibilities as well as social insurance. Additionally, democratic politics were the cause of it. The political system reacted when regular people made requests, expressed complaints, protested, and participated in policymaking. The Beveridge Report, written during World War II, which served as the foundational text for the British welfare state, was a reaction to both political pressure and economic suffering. It aimed to promote civic engagement, protect the underprivileged, and generate opportunities. We have neglected the democratic progress, which is at the basis of many contemporary societal issues. Dribbling out just enough crumbs to keep folks occupied at home and otherwise placated is not the solution. Instead, we must revive democratic politics, increase civic engagement, and look for common solutions. We can only create the institutions required for shared prosperity in the future while safeguarding the most vulnerable members of society with a politically engaged and mobilized society. With that, the video has come to an end. Let us know what you think in the comment section below and help us expand our community and attract more people who share our interests and are eager to learn. Please hit the like button and subscribe if you thought the video was interesting. Till then, bye.